Hello there. I have not talked about Star Rail in quite a long time, but whether you would believe it or not, I've actually been enjoying Star Rail a hell of a lot more than I've been enjoying Genshin as of late. Mostly because it has a skip button, I'm able to blow through most of the story that I don't care about, and just focus on the things in the game that I enjoy, like the combat game modes. And while there are still many things in the game that I don't particularly care for, which I have documented in great detail, I think overall, the game has become a lot more tolerable for me as a player over the past couple months. But like I say all the time, just because I like something, and just because you like something, doesn't mean that something is good. And I would be lying if I sat here and tried to tell you that the Honkai Star Rail is not one of the most actively predatory gacha games I think I have ever played. And that is saying a lot, because some of the gachas I play are entirely paid only. So what's the deal this time? What is the Honkai Star Rail player base actively upset about this time? Well, it is actually about a character that has yet to release, who goes by the name of Cyrene. In order for you to understand why this character has such a massive amount of discourse around her, you first need to understand who Cyrene is. I know a majority of the people that play these games don't actually play miHoYo's other games, so I'll fill you in. Cyrene is essentially an XP for a character known as Elysia. Elysia is one of the most popular and nostalgic characters from Honkai Impact 3rd. For those of you that don't know what an XP is, it's essentially a character in another miHoYo game that takes on the shape or form of a character from Honkai Impact 3rd or Tears of the Themis. For example, Yae Miko from Genshin Impact is an XP of Yae Sakura, Raiden Shogun is an XP of Raiden Mei, Venti is an XP of Wendy, the Hershier of Wind. Elysia, up until this point, did not have a proper XP, and finally got one in the form of Cyrene, who players were very hyped for because this, again, is one of their most popular characters. This character was hyped up for the entirety of the new Enforius story, having minor plot relevance in the beginning until eventually becoming an overarching character in the major narrative of the story, playing a crucial role throughout countless reincarnations that I won't spoil in case you haven't gotten around to the story, because what can I say? The shit's long. But all you need to know is she is very important. People were very excited for her. And finally, in version 2.6 in the leaks, we got to see what she would look like. And in addition to that, her kit was revealed, and her kit is actually, pretty nice, until you think about it for more than a couple of seconds. You see, what she does is, Cyrene is a substantial buffer for members of the Chronos Hairs, having a specialized buff that targets each individual member in their own unique way. However, a majority of these are very questionable, to say the very least. For example, Maide, a character who in his enhanced state is entirely immune to crowd control, gets immunity to crowd control. Exquisite. Just ripping the band-aid off straight away, her only real beneficial use cases seem to be for Hyacine, Evernight, and of course, Castoris, essentially locking her into a mono-remembrance playstyle, which is already, as it currently stands, one of the most competitive teams in the game. But it gets worse. Players quickly realize that she has a unique energy mechanic, where she doesn't regenerate energy normally by taking damage, dealing damage, or using passive effects. Instead, this character generates energy by a special meter in the bottom in the form of a heart that fills up as your allies take actions. However, the generation of these pieces are so unbelievably slow that a majority of team comps that would even want to use Cyrene wouldn't be able to pop her ultimate, which is where a majority of her buffs come from, until around 3 or 4 cycles into combat. And you don't need to play Star Rail for very long to know that that's essentially fucking useless. Now, I'm not saying you need to be able to zero cycle. In my opinion, if you're one of those people that go out and try to zero cycle every single wave, that's a form of mental illness. I just want to get all the rewards and then I'm good as gold. I don't give a fuck after that. I could have 30 seconds left on the timer or 2 minutes left on the timer. I could have 10 turns left on the timer, or I could have 1 turn left on the timer, as long as I get all the rewards. But taking up 4 cycles just to get your ultimate off essentially means that you have 1 more cycle to clear the wave of the hardest content in the game before you're essentially useless. So you would think the buffs that she allows basically makes you win, but it really doesn't. Cyrene, at the end of the day, is essentially a side grade to Evernight for her best in slot team, which is Castoris, which means that even in best case scenario, she struggles a lot. But don't worry, because Star Rail did what they do best, and they offered you a solution to fix this crucial flaw in her kits, her E2. That's right, gamers. If you get Cyrene's E2, this major flaw in her ability to clear content essentially goes away, or is greatly restricted. But, in my opinion, this shouldn't be necessary. And a lot of players gave their feedback during the beta saying that, hey, this is a problem, this is a problem, this is a problem, and nothing got changed. And now players are upset because what the fuck is the point of all of our feedback if you're not going to take any of it? But don't worry, because it gets a little worse than that. In addition to that, Cyrene's light cone is essentially a must pull. So bare minimum, you are looking at a 4-cost character in order to get Cyrene to a functional state in which she is able to work in proper game modes. That being said, my humble opinion, Star Rail is very frequently a game where characters are released and actively doom posted, and then by the time they come out, they end up being about 2 or 3 times better than what you would think they would be from the community. So, take that all with a grain of salt. If that was all there was to the situation, I wouldn't really give a fuck. But, unfortunately, Mihoyo was engaged in some shady business in order to hide the fact that she is a character that is very, very flawed. During the dev's most recent livestream, we got to see some Cyrene gameplay in action. However, the slot provided for the gameplay was only around 37 seconds long, and players very quickly realized that at the start of combat, the Cyrene we were seeing instantly started with 12 particles in her ultimate bar, which means she's at least E2. But no, it actually is a little worse than that, because later, as the devs are showing off her talents, we see her talents are level 11, which means she was E5 at the very least, and it's not a far bar to say she was actually E6, which means that the character that they showcased in the trailer was an E6 character that will be unobtainable by a vast majority of the fan base. Naturally, players are a little upset because this is essentially mismarketing. You are purposely trying to obscure the fact that the character has blatant flaws by showcasing a unit that is overly maxed out to a point that a majority of players will never have even a hope of achieving. And then, in addition to that, they revealed that Cyrene would have a awesome new bow skin for a majority of players to unlock. But it wasn't revealed until later in a blog post that in order to achieve this skin, you need to first obtain, through premium microtransactions, 20,000 of the premium currency, which, for translation, assuming you have no top-up bonuses left, is around $300. And if you do have top-up bonuses left, it'll be around $155 USD. A fact which was conveniently not mentioned by the devs during the live stream. Way to go. So to summarize the situation so far, we have a very popular character who was gutted to underperform in order to sell her E2. And then, in addition to that, they reveal the character on live stream, display her at an E6 status to obscure the fact that she underperforms, and then tell everybody, hey guys, we have this new awesome weapon you can get, which is actually hidden in a blog post that you need to spend $300 in order to get a character and their nostalgia bait skin. But don't worry, ladies and gentlemen, because of the backlash, we received an apology. 1 free 5-star selector in the mail. However, what's worth pointing out is that this 5-star selector fucking sucks. You're only able to pick from standard characters, Luocha, Oran-Mei, and now Topaz. And let me just tell you, any character that is currently present on the standard selector either currently sucks or will suck in the future. If you see a character show up on this selector, just assume they're dead, they're useless, and they're not really worth putting on your teams. If you manage to get Ran-Mei's E1 and her light cone, there's still some use case for her, I will admit, but that doesn't matter if you don't already have Ran-Mei E1, or if you already have Ran-Mei E1 like a majority of the player base, because Ran-Mei is the most pulled character of all time, and they already gave us a free piece last anniversary. So essentially, to most players, this means absolutely nothing. And the ironic part about the entire situation is there are people defending this. A majority of players are talking about how Cyrene is their wife, and they love their wife, and they're gonna pull their wife regardless, and that anybody who has anything bad to say about Cyrene doesn't deserve to get her. Which is incredibly ironic, because the same people that are saying this are the people that got fucked the hardest. But I guess they like that, so, it is what it is. Now, what do I think about the entire situation? I'm gonna be 100% honest. I think that the Star Rail community reaped what they sowed. For a long time, for about a year and a half, Star Rail was actively performing predatory decisions against their player base. And for a long time, players just let it happen and didn't say anything. And if a majority of content creators said anything negative about the game, they were lampooned. And I would know, because I was one of them. And now, we have gotten to the point where the community has let them get away with so much that they are basically testing the limits of how much they can get away with. For example, y'all remember about 6 months ago when Castris released, and a majority of players were talking about how they didn't like the global passive feature, and they were going to boycott Cyrene. Well, that didn't pan out because MiHoYo decided they were going to stand on business, and so many of you folded like fucking laundry, because currently Castris is one of the most profitable banners in their entire release. So good job, guys. You really showed them what for. And don't get me wrong, I play Star Rail, and I like Star Rail, but unlike a majority of the people that play this game, I do two things that y'all don't do. I don't pull on predatory characters. I didn't pull on Castris, and I'm not gonna pull on Cyrene. And when I do play the game, I don't spend money, at least not my money. I am fortunate enough to be in a position where I can create content, and my sponsors pay for a lot of the shit that I have in the game, which is how I've been able to get as many characters as I have, despite the fact I haven't won a fucking 50-50 since Sparkle's original banner. But I admit that I am in a fortunate position, but I'll tell you one thing, if I wasn't, I wouldn't be playing the game, period. So I encourage a majority of you, if you actually think these practices are predatory, you should just do what I do, and don't get the character. It's as simple as that. If they pull this type of bullshit and they see that players aren't biting, guess what they're gonna do? They're gonna stop doing it. But it'll never happen because the majority of the community just laps up all the slop they're given because, you know, Genshin could never, or Wuwa could never, or ZZZ could never. But, you know, it is what it is. It's just Star Rail at this point, as far as I'm concerned. The game's been going a bad way for a while. It's not a secret. A majority of the content creators have been talking about it. But I'm gonna keep finding enjoyment in the things I do like until the predatory shit becomes so unbelievably unbearable that I quit playing the game, or until my friends stop playing, in which case I'll probably tune out too, because they're the only reasons why I still play. All being said, ladies and gentlemen, if you like the video, like it. If you dislike it, dislike it. If you really like me, go ahead and subscribe. Talk to you later. Peace.